So I thought it might be of interest to photographers out there and other folks to learn a little bit about the process behind making Untold LA. Now, when I first had the idea for it and did a successful Kickstarter, I then examined how I wanted to do the book, both in terms of the content and the form. So let's talk about the content a little bit. One way to go, I could have gone, would be to do an art book, right? Something like William Eggleston, who's one of my favorite photographers, highly recommended. William Eggleston's At Zenith, which is just cloud photographs. I think maybe there's 12 or perhaps 15 photos, right? So I could have done that. I'm just going to pick 12 homes, 10 homes, spend a month on each, just do 10 images, right? Exteriors, wait for the light to come just right, and do a lot of post-processing in Photoshop. And so it would be an art book, and each image would be an acceptable fit within the framework of what's considered art, photographic art in the art world. The problem with doing that is that it didn't capture for me the main impact that I had when I came to West Adams, which was when I turned that corner, as I said in the introductory video. I was astonished not just by the first home I saw or the second, but the sheer number of homes in West Adams as I walked the block. So there was, as I've said before in these other commentaries, this fecundity of homes here in West Adams. It really struck me. So just doing a dozen would not be able to capture what I wanted. So I needed to be able to do something that communicated just the sheer volume of the home. So that was part of it. And one way you could go, of course, is to do something more like an app, like maybe just write a script for something like Google Street View. So that would be kind of cool. You'd have an app on your phone or whatever device you've got, and you'd be able to navigate yourself. And that's a valid idea, but it doesn't really speak to me as a photographer, so I would not enjoy the process. I wanted to actually go out there and take photos, so that wouldn't work. So what I wanted to do was find a way to take a large number of photos, right? So I wanted to do a lot of different homes, and I didn't want them to be too processed. Again, I mentioned Eggleston for a second, but there's something that's happening right now where, because of what happened in the 2008 collapse and the effect of the internet, which melts like ice everything it touches, right? So whole industries are disappearing, or professions, careers are disappearing or falling apart or changing or morphing. And that's happening to working photographers as well. So we're in a situation where newspapers are laying off whole staffs of photographers, people are thrown out of work. And part of the result of this is that photographers, a lot of them are turning to social media, to the Twitters and the Facebooks, what have you, and they're trying to make their images as viral as possible. So they're really polishing them, and every image that you see they're trying to make viral, every image becomes like an advertisement for itself. And I have a problem with this in the sense, if someone is trying to sell me something, then I have a natural reaction like, well, if you're trying to sell me something, you're not being truthful. Because if everything is an advertisement for itself, I don't like that. I didn't want that feeling to come across in Untold LA. I didn't want every photograph to, you can imagine the comments on the internet. It's like, you'll never believe how these photographs of Los Angeles will change the way you feel about your grandmother, or what have you. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a more real quality. I didn't want there to be this sense of like, Rollo's equipment set on a tripod and polished everything. No, I wanted more of a snapshot quality. So that's why you'll see photographs of dogs in there. I'm hand holding. The photographs are grainy sometimes because I'm not using a tripod. I wanted a sense of being in the moment, which came across from walking around and meeting the people here in West Adams. So there's that as well. Plus the fact that because I wanted to do so many types of homes, and I wanted that in the moment feel, I wanted to be able to walk around again and again for months in the neighborhood to get to know the people, because I also carried an audio recorder with me, a Zoom audio recorder, and I wanted to get to know them and include their stories in the book. So all this means I couldn't carry around huge amounts of equipment. You think about, most people out there are familiar with the big digital SLRs, the Canons and the Nikons. And I've always shot both. In my professional life for Canons, I've always used, when I shoot behind the scenes in film sets, and I've always used Nikons when I shoot fashion work. But one problem is they're heavy. I didn't want to lug around all this equipment. Plus, because these camera systems are in so much use all the time, for me, the images are sort of trending towards or tending towards similarity. That's a similar Canon and Nikon look. There's different formats, of course. There's more medium and large format and Hasselblads, what have you. But the standard Nikon and Canons were tending towards a similar look. So I was looking for a solution for that as well. And luckily for me, and what I'm doing, there's been a revolution in the last couple of years in camera technology, and that's mirrorless technology. And what that means is we're getting rid, you think of the big Canons or Nikons with that hump, we're getting rid of this mirror which has to flip up and down in order to get the light to the viewfinder. I won't get too technical here, but there's a different way of doing things. And the fine folks at Fuji, I'm not trying to sell you something here, so you won't believe how Fuji changes how you feel about your grandmother. But the fine folks at Fuji have come up with a mirrorless camera, and this is a new type of camera that gets rid of that hump, and there's a lot of other companies that are experimenting with mirrorless now, Sony and Olympus, what have you. A mirrorless camera that was small enough so that I would not have to lug around all this equipment. You may be wondering, well, why am I wearing a jacket? Kind of, I'm wearing a light, very thin layer jacket while I'm indoors. Is because this is the jacket that I wore often in the last year when I've been walking up and down the streets of West Adams. And as you can see, it's not wearing me down, but it's big enough to carry a body of this Fuji camera. This is a Fuji X-Pro 1, and I can carry around a variety of lenses, right? So I have a couple lenses on me, and I'll just screw them in. There you go. And this is great for a number of reasons. Not just how light it is, but notice that when I actually take a photograph, my whole face is not necessarily covered up. I'm much more approachable, right? You think of those big SLRs and how you get the feeling. Some people, they don't want to interact because you're taking a photo. You're taking something. You're taking a photo. You've got that huge long lens. You say, I'm a professional photographer. Like, well, what are you doing? Are you gonna sell those photos? You're gonna exploit me? And something like this is much more approachable and friendly. Even though it can take professional photos, the feeling that you can get across to people is much more friendly. So that's another plus on using this camera. So this is what I did. I used this simple, very small mirrorless system, walked up and down the streets of West Adams, and then when I got home, I assembled the photographs in programs like Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. Didn't do really much Photoshop work other than combining photos. You see that 26 photo panorama or collage of the amazing Second Church of Christ / Art of Living Center on Adams Boulevard. That's because the dome was so big, I had to take a bunch of photos and combine them together. And I did that in Photoshop. Otherwise, everything I did was in a program called Lightroom, which allows you to cull through lots of photos very quickly and then make minor adjustments. Now, funnily enough, and you'll see this if you look through the book, some of the images, even though they're all taken with the same camera and only two different lenses, an 18 and a 35, you'll notice there's a different look to some of them, and that's because the Fuji camera was so new. They used a new kind of sensor, and the sensor is the chip that sort of gathers the light, as you will, or the photons of light. Light will hit this chip, also known as a sensor, and record what's going on in the scene. The chip design was so new that programs like Photoshop and Lightroom had problems in terms of interpreting the information. So sometimes some of the initial images seem a little more crude or perhaps a little more blocky, or there's not as much subtlety, I would say, in light and shadow as the images are later on in the book, and that's because the technology is so new. And of course, people think digital versus film, and they just think there's something called digital, right? There's just something called digital, and film is this, and digital is that. And then, of course, that's not the case at all. Digital is constantly evolving, and I say this because the kind of sensor, the X-trans sensor that the Fuji's using is new. It's not the same kind of sensor you see in Canon and Nikon. There's many other types of technology, like the Foveon sensor that Sigma's using, what have you. So we're just sort of in the beginning of this. I mean, think about the amazing sensors that we've got on cameras. I'm recording this on a camera phone, on my iPhone, for instance, this video right now. And speaking of phones, actually, that was another way to go, right? I could have just done this whole thing socially. I could have just walked around taking photos with my iPhone and put them on Instagram, and that could have been the project. And that's also another valid way of doing it. That didn't speak to me because I'm not that social a person, so it's not natural to me to want to share everything all the time. But also, I like distance in the sense that I like reflection and going a little bit slower. So I didn't want to just take photographs and immediately put them out in the world. I wanted to spend time with them. So over the last year and a half that I've been doing this project, I've thought a lot about the photos that I'm using in the project. And I'm often going back again and again and again, 4, 5, 6 times to the same location, trying, shooting the homes with a different light or a different feeling, a different angle, whatever speaks to me. But that time for reflection is really important, and you do miss that. I think in that sense, in the world of the instant, and I'm not denigrating the world of the instant, but it's not about reflection. It's about right away. Look what I'm doing. Bam, here you go, and then looking at it right away. It's not about I'm really going to think about this what I've just seen and meditate on, what have you. So that's why I didn't go with the camera phone, even though, again, digital technology is amazing. So I had all the images, assembled them in Lightroom, and then thought, well, like in this early stage of the project, what's the end result going to be? How are you going to see it? You just put them on the web or what have you? And I decided initially to go with the iPad. And the reason I wanted to go with the iPad versus just images on the web or a paper book is because of the beautiful sense with an iPad. And this goes for other tablets as well, but I use an iPad because this format is standardized. You know, there's different types of tablets where they're all different dimensions. You're not too sure about the pixel, the number of pixels and things of that nature. And I know that's changing, but at least initially when I started this a year and a half ago, the iPad was the best tablet. And when you hold it up, it's like an illuminated screen. It is an illuminated screen, an illuminated light table. So it's absolutely fantastic for photographs, and it reminds me so much of stained glass. And we have so many beautiful pieces of stained glass, examples of stained glass here in West Adams, that to me this seemed like a natural to do it in the iPad. And so I would come home, cull through the photographs in Lightroom, and then put them into a program called iBooks Author, which is something that the fine folks at Apple and Cupertino, that's not a plug, iBooks Author designed for the iPad. So that's how I did. You get a sense of that process. I decided to go with the new lightweight mirrorless cameras, some of them in Lightroom, and then put them into iBooks Author, which also was a really very simple, arguably too simple tools, too limited tools, but still powerful tools to allow you to put audio and video, what have you. But anyway, that's how the project, that's my thinking behind the project and how it came together, and I hope maybe you found it useful.